Moshe addresses the Jewish people, he tells them what's going to happen in the future. As you heard from Darshan just now, right? If you remain faithful, everything's going to be fine. If you don't, then you're going to be cast out amongst the nations. So they had to listen to Moshe and they had to accept it. That's going to happen in the future. But we're looking at that 3,000 years later. There was a famous Goyish writer who was called Mark Twain. Now we've got enough Baruch Hashem of our Meforshim, we don't need to quote even Goyim. But this is something which is worthwhile quoting. And he says, if you need proof, I think we need proof, if you need proof that the Hashem exists, the Jewish people are a proof. Why? Because they've been cast out. They've been among the nations for 3,000 years, and we've still kept our identity. You can still recognize a Jew. We had next door neighbours when I was in England who came from Cyprus. The grandfather you could recognise straight away. He had a big moustache and he looked like, if you asked him where did he come from? Cyprus. His son looked a bit like the grandson. Was no difference between him and all the other boys in the district. It took 3 generations to lose their identity. And here we Jewish people have been going strong. In Golos, amongst the nations, we had a pretty rough time, to say the least, and yet we keep, and we're still there, Am Yisrael Chai V'Kayim, which is evidence that we have a special guardian angel who looks after us. I think the Chidor says, I may have got the name wrong, that the existence of Klal Yisrael in Golos is a bigger ness than Yeshias Mitzrayim. You see it, we're going out of it with all the listening. After the Second World War, there was devastation. In Europe, which was bubbling and full of Jewish people, yeshivas and everything, was desolation. The German word they used was Judenrein. No Jew there. And the Jewish people was in a pretty bad state. And if you would ask, what does the future hold? Everybody would be nothing much. And yet, 70 years later, look what's going on now. I mean, there's still many Jewish people who are estranged, who haven't yet come to be Mekayim Torah mitzvahs. If you go to Mir's got 7,000 Talmidim, one yeshiva. All the yeshivas are bursting at the seams. Ponovitch, there's no room to sit. It's 70 years later, right? So there's an assurance that Hashem will not forsake us. Right? Now, as we come towards Rosh Hashanah, we have to mention something about Rosh Hashanah after all. I think we mentioned this before. There's a saying in English which is conspicuous by its absence. If somebody would walk through the door here and they wouldn't have a head, imagine someone comes through the door without a head, just arms and legs, so you wouldn't notice what he has got. He would be conspicuous by what he hasn't got. Now the whole of the davening on Rosh Hashanah, which the Mitzvah Shem will participate next Monday and Tuesday, there's something there which is conspicuous by its absence. You would think on a day when we're being judged and we have to be sorry for all our averas, and there's a whole way of doing teshuvah, you have to say Hashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Al-Khay. You're not allowed to mention anything. Suddenly on Rosh Hashanah, we're not mentioning anything about doing sins. What's going on here? There's no day which is more important to mention it, what we've done wrong and how we're sorry and how we're going to improve in the future. But on Rosh Hashanah, even Avinu Malkeinu, which we say, and the first line means Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu L'Fanecha, we've sinned before you. So the first say, you shouldn't have in mind that we've sinned, right? Chatanu L'Fanecha means our forefathers, not us. So it's conspicuous. Why is it not? It's an appropriate time when we should really mention all these things. The answer is that the focus on Rosh Hashanah is to understand and to acclaim and to feel that Hashem is the Melech. It's all very well to say it, but to really understand it and feel it is not quite so simple. Years ago, the concept of Melech was quite easily understood. The Tsar of Russia, he didn't particularly love Jews, to tell you that's the least. And every other day, there was a new gazelle, a new decree. and the Chofetz Chaim had to send missionaries to go and intercede in the royal court of the Tsar, right, to try and remove the gazelas. They took with them a decent amount of money, and they used influence. So the Chofetz Chaim picked a very well-presented Jewish man who could speak Russian well, personality, and he would go and bring the cash, right, and he would present to help the Jewish people. And it says when he was brought into the presence of the Tsar of Russia, he was full of such a terror took hold of him. It was a fearful experience. He lost his power of speech. He couldn't speak. We haven't got a concept now what a melech, a powerful king, is all about. So they are voted on, every single morning. A Jew gets up and he says, Moida ani lefanecha. Don't take for granted that we just open our little eyes and we're functioning and everything is fine. Who says? I mean, I actually know somebody in Gateshead, a young man, a few years back, went to bed night, didn't get up the next morning. Exactly what happened, I don't want to go into details. So when we get up in the morning, we say, first thing, Baruch Hashem, I'm alive. HaKadosh Baruch has returned my soul. Moida ani lefanecha, I thank you. Melech chai v'kayom. Melech, a king, chai, who's alive, a kayom, and exists. So the first words that a Jew says in the morning is Melech chai v'kayom. We just rattle it off. Every time you make a bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech ha'olam. By the way, I shouldn't be really giving these drushes because unfortunately also it doesn't ever enter my mind what Melech is all about. But when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, we're supposed to do, every time you say a bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech ha'olam, Melech, you're claiming HaKadosh Baruch Hu as being the king. Shmona Esrei, Melech, Ozer, and Moshiach, and Mogan, 3 times a day, among other places. So the first, before you can realize that things are not as they should be, you have to appreciate the authority of the king. You have to know what the king is all about. What have I done wrong? I spoke last night, so what? But if you appreciate that as a melech, as a king, that comes first. So the focus on Rosh Hashanah is Malthus. When you blow the shofar, you have to have kavanah when you do a mitzvah. The whole shadow whether you're Yotze if you don't have kavanah. You're supposed to think this is to fulfill the mitzvah of hearing the shofar. Besides that, it's like trumpeting. The trumpets sound at the coronation of the king. It's acclaiming HaKadosh Baruch Hu as being the melech. So that's of primary importance. And that's why we don't talk about our individual sins. It's like someone who gets an audience with the Tsar and he appreciates the king, and then as he goes out he says, could you please give me a sack of potatoes? It's unimportant, it doesn't matter. It's not. The important thing is on Rosh Hashanah to understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Melech, and if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Melech, how comes you haven't done what the Melech has said the whole year round? After Rosh Hashanah, then we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for forgiveness. But the main thing on Rosh Hashanah is this inyan of Malthus. Now, when we on Rosh Hashanah, we read the Parshat of the Akedah. First day is the birth of Yitzchak. The second day we read the Akedah. The question asked is, the place where the Torah was given, Har Sinai, has got no importance now. It's not a place of prayer. You don't go there. You don't daven there. Why not? Very holy spot. There's no holier spot in the whole world. There, something happened which never ever happened before and never happened after. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu came down and told Klal Yisrael the book of rules, the Torah. It's fantastic, right? It was something which never ever happened before or after when the Kabbalah Torah. So at least acclaim the place has got holiness, it's got nothing. People go out of interest, they have a tour here, you can go to the mountains of Har Sinai somewhere, but exactly, got no, and yet, Har Sinai, the Mokan HaMikdash, got special Kedusha. You go to the Kosel, some people have gone to the Kosel the first time and they've turned their whole life around, just one visit to the Kosel. If you go with the right attitude, if you go there and you're sitting there with your foot up and you're smoking a cigarette So you can't expect to be affected. But if you prepare yourself before, and you know you're going to a place where the Gemara says the Shekhinah, the presence of Hashem, has never ever left the place, so it has an effect. And even if it doesn't have an effect, the Or Chaim says anybody who ever davened at the Kosel, it will affect their life forever after. You won't suddenly feel after, but it has a tremendous effect. It's a very holy place. So why has that place got this great holiness, and yet the place where the Torah was given hasn't got? And the idea is anybody. Why is that? It would make sense that the place where the Torah should be given. Huh? So the Mepharshim say the answer is quite simple. Well, by Kabbalah Satorah, it was HaKadosh Baruch Hu who came down and he gave the Torah to Klal Yisrael. Tremendous Shata D'Shmaya, but so to speak, it was the effort of Hashem. The place where the Akedah took place was the effort of a human being. The mission, the job of a human being is to bring Kedusha. That's the whole purpose of the exercise. Avraham Avinu made this tremendous sacrifice. You have the kindest man in the whole wide world. There was nobody ever before or after who was as kind as Avraham Avinu. All the different midrashim. Huh? And he waited till he was 100 years old until he had this son Yitzchak. This son was pretty precious. A parent would be willing to give their life for a child. Sometimes I feel we don't give our parents enough respect because they're prepared to do anything for a child. And here HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Avram's whole philosophy to all the nations was Hashem doesn't want human sacrifices. Hashem doesn't want sacrifices. Hashem wants chesed, kindness, and suddenly this very God comes in. Avram, you know what I want you to do? I want you to take your only son, Yitzchak, and I want you to go and shecht him. Kill your only son. This was against Avram's total philosophy of his whole life. He had waited 100 years to have this very precious son. This was the ultimate. This was one of the greatest nisyonos that anybody had ever gone through. So the place where Avraham Avinu did this mitzvah, this was the input of the human being. The place gets a kedusha. So on that very place where Avraham was prepared and was about to go ahead with the Akedah, had Hashem not, this place gets the kedusha, and that's the place where the Beis Hamikdash stood, and that's the place where one can achieve and one can get close to Hashem. On Rosh Hashanah, we begin by way on Yom Kippur. It's all al-Chet. All these things are said. Just said to somebody else as well, the davening is quite long, and the davening can be a little bit boring, if I may dare to say so, especially if you don't know exactly what you're saying. But everything is taken into account, everything. You can have two people, one person is davening with intense kavanah, and you can see he's really, really having a go. He's weeping, and he's crying, and he's banging, and he's really davening as he should. Another one's finding that they're going tough. It's not very interesting. In the beginning, maybe you can, but the whole day on Yom Kippur, you've got to daven the whole day. Goes tough, right? So, Mepharshim say, you never know what's going on in heaven. Maybe your davening is more chashuv than his. After, if you're emotionally involved and you feel the day and you know what's going on, and it's quite easy to daven. If, on the other hand, it's going tough, it's not so easy. And the very fact that it's not so easy, that makes it so very precious. So the harder it is, maybe the more it's hitting the target. So it's well worthwhile. During the davening we say Avinu Malkeinu. There's a whole long list. Avinu Malkeinu. We say it during the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah every morning after Shachris and after Mincha, right, as we move towards Yom Kippur. And right at the end we say Avinu Malkeinu, and we say that very, very quietly. Why do we say it quietly at the end? I mean, some shuls sing it, it's nice, everybody sings it together. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Aseinu. Do you recognise the tune already? Yeah? I'm sure probably they sing it here as well. But actually, once you say it quietly, why? So I think the Gemara gives somebody gives a marshal. Somebody decides he's going to do a very large shopping in a supermarket. So he arrives there and he realizes the trolleys are not quite big enough for what he wants. So he hooks one trolley onto the other, and he goes round, right, filling up the trolley. One trolley gets filled, the other one gets filled, and he can just about slap it along. And he arrives at where you have to pay, and he stands there, and everybody makes way for him, and you've got a few attendants who are going to unload it and pack it for transporting it, and the the cashier is busy tapping out all the things. A piece of paper comes through the machine. There's a long list, right? At the end, right, tears it off. So and so much money, please. And the fellow says, I'm sorry, but I've got no money to pay. So the cashier says, what? You've got no money to pay? So what do you collect all the food? What are you doing here? So he said, I thought maybe this is a nice big supermarket. Maybe you'll be charitable, right? And you'll let me take all these things for nothing. I'm a poor man, I haven't got anything. So could you please let me have all this for nothing? The fellow, of course, says, certainly not. Not only that, but you jolly well go around and take your trolleys and go and unload and put everything back where you got it from. When we say Avinu Malkeinu, we've got a whole long list. Avinu Malkeinu with this, Avinu Malkeinu with that, asking for this, that and the other. Comes to the end, and Shem might ask, look, okay, very nice, but what have you got to offer? What have you been doing the whole year? Where are you up to? And if we're truthful with ourselves, we would understand that we haven't got all that much to offer. So therefore we say, Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Aseh Imonu Tzedakah. But we have to say this very quietly because we're a bit of shame. Therefore we've got this minhag of saying Avinu very quietly. I would like to take this opportunity. I must say I come here to learn and I get quite a chizuk. A nice atmosphere of learning as it goes along. I mean, I remember a few years ago when it was pretty dead here in the afternoon. I've been coming quite a long time here, and now there's a nice atmosphere going. We're interested in learning, and so I have to thank everybody here. I've got the opportunity of coming in. I'd like to take the opportunity of wishing everybody a Shana Tova, and you should all stay in your learning. Sometimes the going goes a bit tough, but the tougher it is, the more schar you get, the more reward you get for it. And if we only see and understand how much reward one gets for learning Torah, there is nothing in this world. Chacham don't just talk hot air. When they say something, it's emes. He says there's nothing in this world which can reward a person for learning one word of Torah. Nothing in the whole wide world. Because it's something which is, whatever reward you have in this world, even if you live till 120, time's up sometimes, the person doesn't live forever. But a mitzvah is eternal, it goes on forever and ever and ever. So we should grab the opportunity and try and do as much as we possibly can. I'd like to thank everybody again, once again. Everybody should have a healthy, good, and Shana Tova and the Sukkah, sweet New Year. Amen.